folks, how's it going? It is Dave the Drummer, one of the hosts of the official podcast of All Japan Worldwide Fan Group, SUWAMA'S Station Podcast. Now, originally we were going to do just one massive episode, and as I did the editing and was trying to make this thing as just awesome as possible, it was going to clock in at somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 hours. So I made an executive decision to split the episode into two parts. Now, the very first part is going to have what we first talked about in the episode, as well as the interview with Izaac, who is going to come on and talk to us about Colega Pro Wrestling, and we are going to discuss our picks for what was going to happen for the Champions Night on May 16th. However, if you are not in the know, the Tokyo lockdown sort of put a damper on the plans for the Champions Night to happen on the 16th of May, and so things got moved around, and therefore the Champions Night got moved to June 26th. Now, they already had a show at Kirkin Hall for the 30th of June. 6 is obviously the number of the month, so 6/26 is June 26th. Anyways, so the second part of this episode is going to have our interview with Fumi Saito. We are going to discuss the Muto era of All Japan Pro Wrestling and the lead up to it, and a bit about Muto, what he's currently up to, as he is a signed Pro Wrestling Noah talent, as well as being the GHC heavyweight champion. We also discuss a little bit about the climate of the wrestling world as far as Japan is concerned around the time that Muto was the leader of All Japan Pro Wrestling. And then we are going to finish up by talking about all of the stuff that happened in the meantime from us recording that part of the podcast to the later end part of June. Our last piece of news actually comes from the 31st of May. Anyways, let's get over to part one of the podcast for May for SUWAMA'S Station Podcast. Hey folks, how's it going? It is Dave and Matt, the hosts of SUWAMA'S Station, the official podcast of All Japan Worldwide Fan Group. Want to thank you for joining us for another spectacular episode. We are very, very excited to talk about what's been going on the last couple of weeks. Big news, the Carnival, unfortunately, sad face, the most wonderful time of the year has concluded. We are rolling on to the next big show, which is happening in a little under a week at Oda Ward Gym, which is actually the birthplace of All Japan Pro Wrestling. It's a big celebration because we're getting close to the 50th anniversary of All Japan coming up next year, and we are really excited to talk to you about a couple of different things. We're going to give you some news tidbits. We're going to tell you about our predictions and when we were wrong or when we were right during the second half of the Carnival. And we're going to have two awesome interviews. The first one we're going to have is with our pal Izaac, who is also a listener of the show. And we are super excited to have him on the show. He's going to talk to us a little bit about his interest in Colega Pro Wrestling, which is the Bodyguard's new project that just started out beginning of this year. And I know some of you folks are big fans of the Bodyguard. You know, he's a Murder Grandpa, the Muscle Dragon, and we're going to talk about his interest and how he got into Colega Pro Wrestling and his thoughts on it. And, you know, it's not something that if you haven't been paying attention, it's a big deal. But if you are interested in indie Japanese pro wrestling, where some All Japan wrestlers that had been regulars in the last couple of months, years, have kind of not been working in All Japan show so much. They've been showing up in Colega, including one or two that have really kind of set off of a small controversy in the English-speaking Japanese pro language community, and we're going to talk about that a bit. And we're also going to have a very, very, very fantastic interview with our good friend Fumi Saito about the Muto era of All Japan and the wrestling climate and what it was in the early 2000s leading up to Muto's exodus in 2013 and forming Wrestle One before it closed last year. So we have awesome stuff. We can't wait to talk about it. Matt, we can't wait to talk about it, right?
Oh yeah, it's gonna be great stuff.
All right, well, let's get right to it then. So the 24th, we have ourselves some quick things to bring us up to speed at this point. So the 22nd, there were even days leading up to that, we had seen on Twitter a lot of Japanese fans beginning to voice their concerns that more than likely a state of emergency was looking to be called by the Japanese government in certain areas. And eventually that wound up becoming a real thing. And so we saw areas in Tokyo, believe it was Kyoto, Hyogo, and Osaka, if I'm not mistaken, that were the affected areas for the state of emergency. And unfortunately for All Japan, they had their last two big shows scheduled up for Korakuen Hall. And so unfortunately, it put All Japan in a very peculiar spot. They decided that they had to continue without the crowds. And there was some talk that they would not do the shows originally, and so we did have on the awesome Fumi Saito come in and kind of explain that the shows were going to still happen just without crowds. And so some folks were kind of split on that decision, but I feel as though they still gave us some incredible wrestling those last nights over at Korakuen Hall. But let's start off on the 24th at Shinkaiba, as we were getting to, okay? Koji Iwamoto and Francesco Akira get the win over Next Streams. Excuse me. Next Streams, Atsuki Aoyagi and Rising Hayato, when Awamoto used the Koko no Gejetsu on Hayato at 5:33. Hikaru Sato, Dan Tamura of Evolution get the win over Purple Haze's Zeus and Izanagi when Tamura uses the Dunlock on Izanagi. This will prove to be a big piece of the puzzle for what happens later on during the month when we have a clear picture of the Champions Night event over at Ota Ward Gym. Jake Lee, Tajiri, Okuto Omori, and Yusuke Kodama from Total Eclipse get the win over Yoshitatsu. Takao Omori, Black Minzode, and Yuki Honda when Omori pins Black Minzode at 5:17. And Carnival action, we have Koji Doi and Shinjiro Otani going to a double count out at 6:39. We have Shotaro Ashino getting a big win over Shuji Ishikawa, another win over a former Triple Crown heavyweight champion, a top heavyweight in All Japan with the ankle lock at 7:08. Kento and Kohei Sato, they hook up. Kento gets the win here at 12 minutes with the shutdown German suplex. And at the main event, Suwama pulls out a very, very surprising win here on Yuma Aoyagi at 17:44 with the backdrop hold. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I'm looking at my predictions as we speak, and I picked Suwama to win, I picked Kento to win, I picked Ashino to win, and I picked Doi to win. So I was 3 for 4 on that night. Not bad, if I may say so myself. Matt, where were your predictions in Carnival action that night?
I believe I was Doi with a win, so that didn't happen. Ashino, again, the win over Shuji. I got that right. I was 3-1, so I got Kento right, and I got Suwama right.
Very nice.
Because I said, I said Suwama should win that because I think with Yuma again wins over Zeus and Jake, and then gets another one 3 times in a row would have been a little bit too much.
Right.
In terms of like his booking, because again, Yuma's supposed to be this underdog guy. Like he gets his ass kicked, the fans are behind him. If he beats 3 of the biggest names in a row, kind of hard to like. He needs to struggle a little bit. And
he does.
Yeah. So with and again, I think was Suwama 0-4 at the last year or did he only win one match?
I am not 100% sure.
Because he did poor the last carnival, so he needs to like make that up, especially as it could be his last run as Triple Crown champion. Like he has to look strong no matter what.
Right. No, I definitely agree that, you have to keep him looking strong, even if he is to lose the Triple Crown later on to whoever
Hopefully.
wins whoever wins the carnival is definitely going to challenge him for it. Now, I'm looking at the schedule from last year, thanks to our good friends at pudolove.com. Make sure you're checking them out because they do the Lord's work as well as cage match. It's Sternness and our good pal Striga that are basically working on it. But as I'm looking at it, Suma won his opening match against Kumarashi. He lost to Jiro, who is now in the WWE. Okay, Jake beat Suwama in the carnival last year. Okay, and it looks like also that Suwama took a loss to
Zeus.
Yes, he took that 5-minute loss to Zeus, right? And so Suwama already in this tournament is more successful than he was last year. And so that's something to really consider because he was champion this time last year as well. And so with that, we need to consider that, this probably is, and it's looking like for the most part, it is his last ride at the top. I hate to be a little corny, but let's say it, So anyways, let's talk about the matches, the carnival matches of the night. It was a good show. Undercard did a really good job of keeping the fans, hot, right? Because I believe this is one of the last nights they had crowds fans in the crowd, excuse me. And so I'm sure they wanted to give them all their worth, make it to where it was like, memorable, a good show, a good night of wrestling. And I would definitely say it was that. They kept the undercard really tight. I think it doesn't go any more than 20 minutes or so, all that wrestling together in the undercard. Now, Doi and Otani definitely had a very interesting match. I honestly thought these guys had hooked up in 0-1 before, or I'm sorry, in Wrestle 1 before, because early on 0-1 and Wrestle 1 had a relationship, and there was even nights where I believe there was events where it was featured. It was like Wrestle 1 versus 0-1. And most notably, Masakatsu Funaki won the World Heavyweight title of 0-1s, won it from and lost it back to Kohei Sato right before he took off a couple of years later. But Doi and Otani had a pretty solid match. Ashino and Ishikawa was just about where I had pegged it to be. It was a slow match. It was a slow burn. I liked it. I enjoyed it. I do hope we get to see another singles match between these two. Kento and Sato, they definitely had as many fans will like to say, a Kento match, right? Kento has that style that he basically, brings to all of his matches, and it's not exactly a bad style. And I think he does try to tailor make them according to the opponents that he has in front of him. And so I would say that this was a good match as well. And I definitely want to say for certain that the main event lit it up like a Christmas tree. Suwama and Yuma, they have really good chemistry, really good back and forth here. You didn't really seem like Suwama was going to take this, neither Yuma, and it pretty much just comes down to the ending stretch, and Suwama pulls out the surprising win here. And I got to say that this was a very good night, probably better than the previous night, the 18th, right? With the exception of maybe that Yuma Jake Lee match, because that was fire, right? And I feel as though Suwama and Yuma kind of work a similar kind of match here. Not quite the same, obviously, as different opponent, but I do think that this was a fantastic night of pro wrestling action. Kudos to the carnival matches. They did exactly what they came to do. Your thoughts?
Doi and Otani, that was solid. I was not expecting a double count out. With that, I believe Otani is out because of this.
Okay.
But yeah, that was solid stuff. They were stiff with each other, which I liked. Like Otani could take a beating, so
Sure he can.
for
Sure
his
he
for
can.
his age, yeah.
Yeah, Otani, he is, I would say he is still one of the best products that the Hamaguchi gym and
Right.
the New Japan dojo basically have produced. He is still, in my view, the top junior heavyweight prospect of all time that's not Liger.
You're right. Right.
Right? He's number 2 underneath Liger, and Liger is such a phenomenal athlete, such a phenomenal wrestler. He's like once in a lifetime generation. And I know some
Yeah.
people are more about Sayama and the Tiger Mask, but I would say for my money, Liger overall as a wrestler, as a person, as a personality, it is the number
Yeah,
one.
it's all Liger. Like with Tiger, he changed the game for juniors, but Liger is still like the better wrestler.
Yeah, Liger didn't just come in and revolutionize it. He like literally changed the whole spectrum of junior heavyweight wrestling, and he did it for way longer than Sayama did. But anyways,
Right.
yeah, we're getting away from the fact that Otani
All
is,
right.
is just a badass.
But yeah, Ashido and Shuji, that was fine how it was, especially for the length. Because with how Ashido acted, he went straight for the ankle lock right away. Like he knows, okay, I have to step up. I have to be ruthless. So
Right.
let me get those quick wins.
Right.
So it worked here. So and hopefully this leads to a TV championship match in the future.
Yeah, I hadn't actually thought about that, but I think you're right on the nose with that. That could set up a challenge.
Yeah, especially if they want to elevate the belt as an actual legitimate mid-card belt and not a comedy belt thanks to Yoshitatsu.
Well, I mean, we got to give some credit. We have to give some credit to Tajiri. He kind of treated it like the TV title, sort of like a comedy belt as well, too.
Right, right. But I'm saying like after like Jun Kasai and now Shuji, like now they could actually hopefully make it something.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely hear what you're saying.
Yeah. Kento and Kohei, that was nice. It was basically a battle of knees versus forearms, and they were both stiff from each other.
Hmm.
And I like that. Again, it's a Formula de Kento match cut in half, but it worked.
Right.
It worked for the 12 minutes. Suwama Yuma was great. Again, with the last couple of performances from Yuma, I think to solidify that he was probably he's the MVP of the whole tournament.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Like even if he doesn't, spoiler, he doesn't win, but even despite that, he still looked like this is where he needs to be. So again, he was very far behind compared to Nomura, Jake Lee, and Kento as the future.
Right.
And now, after the past year, he's actually improving. He actually got better, and now I want him at that top spot because he's actually earning this. If he just keeps this up, at least in a year or so, he'll be right on par with everyone, and then definitely a Triple Crown champion in the future.
Right. I'm totally with you on all those points. I gotta say, the future's looking bright for Yuma, and the future's looking bright for All Japan because Yuma's gonna be he could possibly be in the driver's seat inside of a year. Only time will tell. So we move on to the next show on the 25th, which is another Shinkaiba First Ring show. Now, if I'm not mistaken, by this point, the lockdown had been enacted and fully executed, and so there were no fans on this show. And so
Right.
Izanagi and the opener took down Black Minzore with his inside cradle at 6:06. Tajiri, Hokuto Omori, Yusuke Kodama, they get the win. Total Eclipse gets the win over Koji Abumoto, Dan Tamura, and Francesco Akira when Omori pins Akira at 5:49. Yuma, Atsuki, and Rising Hayato, next stream, they get the win over Yoshitatsu, Takamori, and Ryuki Honda when Yuma taps out Honda with the end game at 6:46. In Champions Carnival action, we saw Ashino and Otani go one-on-one. Ashino getting the win with the ankle lock at 11:08. Kohei Sato gets the win over his former tag team partner and good friend Shuji Ishikawa with the horizontal cradle at 11:06. The junior heavyweight title was defended on the show when Sema, who now represents Strong Hearts as well as GLEAT, got the win over Hikaru Sato at 15:01 with a modified pinfall. In the semifinal, we saw Jake Lee score a huge win over Zeus with his D4C brainbuster / vertical suplex finisher at 15:50. And in the main event, Kento gets the win over Suwama at 20:51 with the shutdown German suplex. Now, taking a look at my predictions, I picked Kento. That I picked for the match of the night, which it wound up being Zeus, Sato. I picked Zeus, Kento, Sato, and Ashino. Those are my picks for that night.
Yeah, I had Ashino. I believe I had Tsuji. And then I had Zeus. And then I had a draw for the main event. So
I went 3 for 1.
Yeah, and this one I went 2 and 2.
Well, I mean, you can't always be right?
Nah.
So anyways, let's talk a little bit about the action on the night, right? So why don't you go ahead and start and tell me what you thought of the overall quality of the show, and then you can get to the carnival matches.
Oh, yeah, definitely another solid show. The show they're able to put on stuff. Again, they put on good quality despite no crowds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like we'll pretend they're there, and now we got when we needed. Jake got revenge on Zeus, so that was good. And I expected Zeus to win, but the fact that he didn't, yeah, it makes sense because again, if Jake's going to be this top heel, he needs to be more developed. So he cannot take it at a loss like Suwama and then Yuma, and then you try to with Zeus. So suddenly it wouldn't make him look as dominant with that role.
Right.
Yeah, Shino Otani was good. Shino is definitely trying to find his groove in All Japan. So this was a nice step. Him getting a win, it was a must to stay in the game because they need people to rally behind him for that. Sato and Ishikawa, that was solid stuff too. I was not expecting a cradle for a victory, but it worked for what it needed to do, especially for a big guy like Shuji. Junior title match, it was just predictable mostly of how it was going to be booked. But overall, besides that, it was okay stuff. I'm just not a fan of Koji getting a rematch so suddenly.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure we'll get to that later when we talk about the card.
Mm-hmm.
Kento and Suwama, I think this was my favorite match that was not a final.
Right.
Overall, because they never go wrong with each other, and Kento winning was the right call because it seems like he's going to be the one that is probably going to be considered a finalist. And since it wasn't for the belt, it didn't matter. Suwama lost. So,
right.
Again, it was good stuff. Suwama beat him for the belt the last time. So, again, it's like, all right, I'll let you beat me this time.
Yeah.
But great match. I love it. And it was the right choice for the winner.
So I thought this was a really good night, even better than the first night at Shinkaiva, up and down. I really do think so. And I want to talk a little bit about Ashino and Otani working a really good match. I mean, on paper, it only sounds marginally good, but I really enjoyed this. I thought they worked together pretty well. And while we probably won't see another singles match between them for a while, it did make me think how nice it would be if they did hook up eventually. That's like a Triple Crown title match. It's kind of hard to say because Otani has, if you've been kind of keeping tabs on the situation in 0-1, Otani for the last few years has been wrestling primarily as a junior heavyweight again, sort of a revitalization of his career as a junior heavyweight. And so it'll be interesting to see if he punches back up to being a heavyweight. Kohei Sato and Shuji Ishikawa, they had a match that you figured they were going to have, which was, pretty stiff, right? Bit slow than, what we had in the opening of the carnival, right? Surprisingly, you got two guys that are just about a little bit, not too, well, yeah, I mean, there's a sizable, I guess, age difference between Otani, Ishikawa, and Sato, but Ashino is a young guy, and he still managed to have a fairly up-tempo match with Otani, and I was really glad for that. But Sato and Ishikawa, together again, singles match, it was really cool to see that again. CIMA getting the win over Sato, I was sort of mixed on. I know there's people that aren't very big fans of Sato. I love the guy. I would not be opposed to him having another junior heavyweight title reign, and I guess it just wasn't in the cards for CIMA to drop the belt just yet. We had talked about it in our last episode that this was sort of a barometer that if CIMA were to beat Sato, there's a fair chance that he would be sticking around a bit longer. And after the title bout, you would see Koji Yamamoto come out and lay down the challenge to CIMA for a shot at the World Junior Heavyweight title. And so that's as Matt was mentioning. And it looks like there's a good chance Yamamoto is going to take the belt back from CIMA. After that, it's kind of hard to predict how that's going to all lay out. All we can do is just watch and wait. Jake and Zeus had a fantastic match, but there's something here that I want to discuss real quick, which is that Jake getting the win over your top main guys in All Japan right now was the smartest move you can have, because it reestablishes a point, which is Jake is still a credible threat, can beat any one of the heavyweights at any time he wants to, right? He nearly had Suwama. He nearly won the he nearly beat the Triple Crown heavyweight champion, but it's that factor of he just needed to go just a little bit further and he would have won, but he didn't, right? So that's kind of leaving a what if on the table, but people like a mystery, right? So I think there's a big story to tell in the fact that Jake Lee got away from Suwama and couldn't put him away. So it's like if they do face each other again in the near future for whatever circumstance, can Jake put him away then, right? Which is a big thing. Kento, Suwama, they cannot have a bad match with each other. They are very, very good at what they do. They tell a fantastic story in the ring. That whole rivalry between them, the two schools of thought that we've talked about with Fumi Saito, Kento is not a trueborn of All Japan. Suwama is. And so you've always got that dynamic going between the two. And it definitely shows in their matches. But it only adds to the spice of the match, right? So I've got to hand it to these guys. They always seem to have their singles matches, and they always seem to manage to find a way to keep it fresh. And my hat goes off to them. Match of the night. Easily. Right. So we move on to the next night, which is Yokohama City Hodogaya Public Hall. This will be the last show of the tour of the carnival that's going to have fans, because this was outside of the affected areas of the state of emergency declared by Japanese leadership. And so Hikaru Sato, Dan Tamura in the opener get the win over Francesco Akira and Alejandro when Tamura uses the Dunlock on Akira at 6:16 to get the win. Tajiri and Hokuto Omori of Total Eclipse get the win over Next Stream's Atsuki Aoyagi and Rising Hayato when Omori used the Muso Isen on Hayato for the win, 5:53 if I didn't mention it already. Takao Mori, Koji Iwamoto, Black Menzore, they get the win over Yoshitatsu, Izanagi, and Yuki Honda when Iwamoto used the ground Cobra Twist on Honda at 6:16 for the win. Yuma, Aoyagi, and Koji Doi reopen up a chapter of their rivalry since Doi has arrived in All Japan. And if you're not familiar, Doi was basically hounding Yuma during the carnival was held in September of last year. If you are just getting familiar with modern All Japan, Yuma was getting troubled by Doi. Doi was picking fights with him, was basically assaulting him and being a thorn in his side. And surprisingly, it was Kento that came out to sort of put a stop to that. And that is sort of what was a bone of contention, was Yuma was not certain about Kento's intentions and coming out and, helping him until they reunited as a tag team a few months later for the Real World Tag League. And their revival has been running strong ever since then, in becoming the essential building blocks of the new version of it, Next Stream, the 2021 version of Next Stream. But Yuma gets the win over Koji Doi at 10:21, with the end game ends just about the same amount of time as their last singles match last year. And I'm excited to see what these guys do when they are getting closer to the main event. Now, it's understandable why this isn't higher up on the card, because while Yuma is pretty much, he's punching his ticket to the main event scene because he is one half of the World Tag Team Champions, Doi is still pretty much at the bottom rung of the heavyweights, but he's looking good in the process. Doi definitely larger than Yuma and just as fast as him, maybe a bit more brutal, but Yuma is a smarter wrestler, used his head, and was able to pull out shades of Jun Akiyama, his mentor, to get the win over Doi and to stay on top of him in terms of the ladder of heavyweights in All Japan. Zeus getting the win over Ashino with the jackhammer at 8:22. Jake Lee gets the win over Kohei Sato with the knee kick at 11:05. Suwama gets the win over Shinjiro Otani with the Manariki Sleeper at a little under 16 minutes. Shuji Ishikawa and Kento, they hook up, and it is Shuji Ishikawa who is victorious with the giant slam, pulling out all the tools in the bag that he's got and having to resort to the biggest tool, and that wind up being the downfall of Kento. And I just got to say that these tournament matches, at least for me, was just a bit better than the night before. Now, Ishikawa and Kento, right, I want to say that it wasn't as good as Kento and Suwama, but the whole carnival, all those matches, up and down, I feel was better than the night before, right? Suwama and Otani, they work a very similar style, at least at this point in their careers. Jake, Sato, pretty much on the level in terms of, I don't want to say just pure skill and ring know-how, but I would definitely say they were sized up opponents on that, on that occurrence. Zeus and Ashino, that's a very interesting match, and you don't really see that too often, and so it was really interesting for me to see Zeus go up against Ashino. Ashino's skill set would be something that would be able to bring down the God among men, but it just wasn't enough here, and it keeps Ashino away just enough to pretty much shatter his hopes of trying to reach the finals. And like I said, Yuma and Doi, they're going to have a fantastic rivalry if things shape up the way they're looking to be. So I thought this was a fantastic night of wrestling. Matt, what were your thoughts?
Sorry. Yeah, this was definitely a solid show, especially for the last time there's a crowd for a while. I believe I was 3 out of 5 in predictions. So I think the only ones I got wrong were Ashino's match and Kento's match.
Right.
But Yuma and Koji, they don't do wrong with each other. There's definitely a solid chemistry. But at the same time, it still leaves you with wanting more.
Yeah, which is a sign of good wrestling.
Yeah. Like both matches were about 10 minutes or less. So maybe there'll be another match. Maybe they'll go 12 to 15 minutes. Who knows? But definitely Yuma winning here was the right call. to try and catch up, especially if he has a chance of winning. So he needs to pick up a win again, especially after losing to Suwama. And what you call it? Zeus and Ashino, that this was a hard pill to swallow because the fact that whoever lost here was going to be eliminated.
Right.
But at the end of the day, Zeus is the star. Well, he is the star of All Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Ashino is not yet. So Zeus winning here, he has to look dominant since he was basically practically undefeated last year and a quarter of this one. But yeah, he has to look as dominant as possible. And if it has to come to the expense of Ashino losing when he was building up momentum, then I would do the same thing.
Right.
With that. So it was still good stuff. They're definitely going to have another match in the future.
Yeah.
Especially after 8 minutes. Because them together screams a future main event for a title.
I think so too.
Lee and Sato, that was decent. What'd you call it? The headlock. I was kind of more surprised that Jake was being more technical with this match, especially like trying to get Sato in the headlock for like a good majority of the match. And Jake is toning down his cartoonish personality a bit.
Yeah. He's getting more serious.
Yeah, well, yeah, because again, there's like 2 shows left after this one, so he kind of has to. Mm-hmm. Especially if he wants to win. And I like that he won with the giant killing knee, so that was nice. Also stiff with the kicks and knees from both of them. I like that.
Yeah, they work a similar style for sure.
Oh yeah, yeah. Sato's just a lot taller. Like you don't see it till he's facing all these other guys.
Well, him and Jake were pretty much on the same size, I think, right? They're just about the same size.
Roughly, but yeah, like Sato is still taller than.
Oh yeah, Sato's taller than most of the guys in Modern All Japan. Like I think he's even taller than Zeus, and Zeus is like, he's
godly.
Yeah, he's pretty big. He's pretty big, and it's kind of strange because once upon a time, Sato, while not the same size as Zeus, Sato when he was younger, like he had a much more muscular physique, and Sato has just definitely like trimmed down that frame. And he's not as muscular as he used to be, but he's just about as deadly as he was back then.
Anyway, Suwama Otani, that was solid stuff. It did look like Otani was hurt.
Yeah.
In this match, yeah, they probably would have went a couple more minutes, but they saw like, all right, he's done type of thing, so they went with the sleeper.
Right.
But outside of that, like it shows like with their ages, they still could throw solid matches.
Yeah.
And this was definitely that. So Suwama again picking up a win back to stay in the game. That was a smart move. And same with Suji beating Kento, since they want Jake. Since right now Jake's the only one that's in first place.
Right.
So like they want, I guess like this makes more sense for him to keep that. Well, hopefully the next day someone else tries to catch up the tie to make it a little more even. So if it gives Jake a little bit of a confidence booster, then that's fine. And so yeah, I'm okay with that, especially since Kento won, 3 in a row? Mm-hmm. Yeah, he won about 3 in a row. So like he had to lose again outside of Zeus in the first round. So this was a great time to have him lose his next match.
Yeah, Kento went. Oh no, yeah, Kento beat Doi. Kento beat Sato, and Kento beat Suwama in the last 3 nights. And so yeah, a loss here, it kind of it's a sting, but it kind of shows that Kento is still in a good position to make the finals. Would you say this was a better night than the last one?
I think undercard wise, yes. Mm-hmm. But main event, it was still Kento and Suwama.
Okay, yeah. So we're on a similar wavelengths on that one. Yeah. The next show is the 29th at Shinkaiba, and it is quite unfortunate that Kohei Sato gets his next points due to forfeit. Now Otani had put out a statement through 01's press people that he had suffered. I think it was a shoulder injury, right? And so he was not going to be able to compete in the last matches that he had for the Carnival. So it's awesome that he made it this far. And as you mentioned, he did look a little rough out there towards the end with Suwama. And so it's more than understandable that he stepped down from the rest of his matches and just take the losses. He had 2 matches left with Sato and Zeus. Now, some folks out there seem to think that this could be a quote-unquote kayfabe injury and that Sato and Otani still have heat from when Sato basically left 0-1 due to whatever reason. And so we're basically leave it up to you folks to speculate because we have no firsthand knowledge about that. And so it's anybody's guess as to if Otani is legitimately injured or if he just said to hell with it and just didn't want to work with Sato. Either way, Sato gets 2 more points and he moves on. Yoshitatsu gets a win over Ryuki Honda at 7:25 with the crab hold. Koji Awamoto, Dan Tamura, Francesco Akira get the win over Izanagi, Atsuki Aoyagi, and Rising Hayato when Awamoto uses the Koko no Gejetsu on Hayato at 7:14 in a match to build up the 6-man tag team title. Tajiri Okotomori get the win over Takao Mori and Black Menzore when Menzore gets disqualified for his team. Now, originally, this match was going to be for the 6-man titles, but Omori, days before, had petitioned to All Japan management that this match should be going on a higher scale. And so what wound up happening is that this match for the 6-man tag team title, right, with Tajiri, Hokuto Omori, and Kodama against Carbell, Omori, and Black Menzore is going to be moved to the Champions Night on May 16th. And so that request was pushed through, and thus the title match was moved on. But originally this was going to be a 6-man title match on this night. In Carnival action, we had Zeus and Koji Doi go to a double count out. Oh, I do want to mention for that last night, I believe I went 1 for 5. I believe the only winner I picked was Shuji going and getting the win on the 28th in Yokohama. Anyways, Zeus, Koji Doi hook up in the first match of the Carnival action that night, and it goes to a double count out at 11:04. Suwama gets the win over Shotaro Ashino, surprisingly at 11:44 with the backdrop hold. Shuji Ishikawa, Jake Lee, they hook up, and it is Ishikawa that goes on top of Jake Lee. Kind of surprised on that one too, with the Luthez press at 14:12. And in the main event, Kento gets the win over his tag team partner and co-holder of the World Tag Team tag titles, Yuma Aoyagi, with the shutdown German suplex at 26:59. A couple of quick notes here. Suwama and Ashino officially decide to form a tag team. I don't think that Ashino is formally a part of Evolution, but they are willing to make a tag team for the future since Suwama is without Shuji Ishikawa, and so that winds up being a big development here. And surprisingly, Kento and Yuma, they don't get too heated in that matchup in terms of pulling out, dirty tactics and just like not being cool, man, towards one another post, pre, and during the match, which is kind of a big thing, because I truly was under the impression that we could start seeing the seeds of discontent being sown here in this match. But I, was wrong, and, those things happen. You can be wrong. You got to just own up to it. But I would say this was a fantastic night over at Shinkaiba. I would probably say this was a little bit better than the last night in Shinkaiba, which was the 25th, right? For me, I think that the action was much more up tempo, and definitely kept you on the edge of your seat, especially with Suwama and Ashino. I really thought Ashino was going to pull it out here, and he didn't. Shuji and Jake Lee, I definitely didn't see that ending coming. I really, really, really didn't. And then Kento and Yuma, Kento can't have a bad match against Yuma. They had a fantastic match, killed it in the main event. I definitely feel like that is going to be a Triple Crown title match in the future that everybody is going to be talking about for the ages. And on my picks, I had Ashino going over, Zeus going over. Yeah. I had Yuma going over, Lee and Otani. Obviously, Otani was out because of injury, and Lee winds up taking the loss. I was very, very surprised about that. Again, with my predictions right there. Right, I really thought Yuma would get the win over Kento, but as it turns out, you can be wrong. It's all good in the hood. Zeus and Ashino. I did not think that they were going to go to a double count out or a draw.
Koji, not Ashino.
Oh no. I was saying that, like, separately, as in like
okay.
Zeus going to a draw was not what I predicted, and I had Ashino getting his win, his first win over Suwama in this matchup, but it didn't happen, right? And so that's kind of surprising to me. I really thought that Ashino would be able to get, a small bit of credibility back from that win over Suwama, but instead it just kind of brings them closer. And as I mentioned, now they're a tag team. What are your thoughts on this night, Matt?
Definitely a lot better action top to bottom for this one, so this was good. Disappointed that it was a double count out with Zeus and Doi, but since Sato was out, sorry, not Sato, Otani, since Otani was out, and then Zeus didn't have a match for the final show, he kind of had to be eliminated here. Otherwise, he probably would have won at least one more match and then lose the final show.
Right.
To get out, but so with that, the only way to do it without getting a clean pin, because Doi is not on that level to get a clean pin over Zeus, and I like Doi, but let's just be realistic.
Right.
And I was kind of surprised with Suwama beating Ashino, so, but I get it at the same time.
It's his last ride.
It's his last ride, and if Ashino did have extra points, it probably would have been a different outcome, but it just wasn't happening. But now it looks like he's taken Shotaro under his wing, essentially, not a part of Evolution, but help him. Like, okay, like you can be great. Let me show you.
Yeah.
So I think with him mentoring him in All Japan, you'll see a new Ashino compared to how he was in Wrestle 1. Shuji beating Jake, this makes sense. If Jake had to take one more loss, it had to be right here, especially with Lufez press. So it was like clean. It was just a quick pin to throw him off guard. So that worked.
Mm-hmm.
Yuma and Kento, it was a great match, but it was one of those, like, whoever won this match was probably going to be a finalist.
Right.
And I did have Yuma as a finalist, but with Kento winning, like, yeah, it makes more sense, especially with Kento, with the history between Kento and Jake.
Right.
So if they wanted Jake to be this top guy, you have to fight Kento in a final match. So it's just more realistically than what we want as fans.
Mm-hmm.
We gotta look at it realistically. Like, Kento is the star. If you want to be that next guy, you gotta beat him in a big match. So that's gonna be the big test for Jake. So overall, though, still great match, and happy with the outcome. That's all I gotta say about it.
Kento and Yuma, what do you think on that one?
Like I said, it was a great match.
Well, no, I guess what I meant to say is that were you surprised that there wasn't any, I guess, shenanigans or any kind of dissension that was beginning to brew between the two of them.
I felt like now that Jake is the heel, there was like really no point of Yuma being the heel now.
Mm-hmm.
Because Jake needed more than Yuma.
Right.
I think with Yuma, I think it was just more jealousy type of thing. Like he wanted to show that he can be something outside of being in Kento's shadow, so he threw that hissy fit for the past year.
Right.
Until Kento knocked some sense into him twice with the title match and then the carnival.
Right.
Like, I like you, but I've had to smack you down to get you in line. Like you're not in my shadow, you're my equal, so this is when they become the team to win the belts, and it shows that now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What do you think of this in comparison to the last night in Shinkaiba, which is the 25th? Like, do you think it's better? Do you think it's on par? What are you thinking?
I think I like this day a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
The only kind of downgrade was Zeus and Koji, but despite the outcome, it still wasn't bad.
Right.
So it probably would have been a lot better if we also had Kohei and Otani.
Mm-hmm.
But since that didn't happen, yeah. But Suwama Ashino was great. So was Ishikawa and Lee, and then Kento and Yuma, obviously. With the whole Otani situation, I kind of hope it's not true with the whole back it out. I highly doubt it because that was the case. Like he knew like over a month or so ahead of time that he was going to be a part of this.
Yeah.
So if he really didn't want to, he should have said, "I decline. I'm sorry. I wish you luck, but give that spot to someone else."
Right.
But
okay.
Since they didn't do that, like he probably did want to, like he probably would have been professional, squash their beef in the ring, but since he popped his shoulder, we weren't able to get that, so we don't know what would have happened. I still think Kohei would have won, but I feel like hopefully they probably would have worked out their issues in that reign, and then it would just be a stiff fest.
Right. One thing we should note is that, well, two things actually, is that I went, geez Louise, I think I went 0 for 5, technically speaking, with the for the forfeit of Otani. So, yeah, I was feeling kind of bad about my picks. But also what we should note is that Sato, because of the forfeit, he gets 10 points, and he is sitting in there as a possible spoiler for what could be the top of the ladder of his the carnival itself, right? Which I don't think they anticipated, right? But we'll get to that once we get to the next round of the carnival, which is the final night of the carnival, night 10, right? But real quick, how did you go on your predictions?
I believe this one, not counting Sato and Otani, I think I was 2 out of 4 because I had Tsuji and Kento,
Mm-hmm.
and I had Zeus and Ashino, but those didn't happen. So
I truly thought that if the water was under the bridge, that Otani would get the win over Sato, right? I was actually kind of looking forward to this match, and we talked about this before. Me and Matt did just the other day, that Sato and Otani was probably a match that a lot of people were looking forward to, just to see how they would interact post Sato's leaving 0-1. And so this does kind of leave a bit of not a sour taste in my mouth, because I really wanted to see it, but you kind of understand the situation, which is just you're not going to get that match. And these things happen, right? So that's just wrestling for you. Cards are always subject to change, as I believe Jim Cornette is a big proponent of saying. So moving on to the final night of the carnival, okay? This was over at Kurikan Hall. No crowd, unfortunately, but a lot of folks were still very much interested on the outcome, even if we couldn't be there live. I'm sure there's a lot of Japanese fans that were still tuned into this thing live just as much as I was, and a couple of other folks like Kompa, our friend Kompa, that we talked to on Twitter at the AJPW Worldwide Twitter account. And it was a great night. I'm going to go on the record and say that this, to me, was probably the best night of the carnival. If you're really going to put, both feet forward, They did it on the right occasion. Now, the fans not being there, you could argue, did have an effect on the morale, on the work rate. I don't think it had that much of a difference. I think they still worked their asses off to produce one hell of a wrestling show, one of the best Korakuen Hall shows they've done this year, and possibly one of the best Korakuen Hall shows they're going to do all year around. So let's go through that card. Zeus picks up 2 points from Otani due to the forfeit because of injury, and he opens up the show with the rest of Purple Haze, Izanagi Udamaru, missing Shigehiro Irie. They get the win over Hikaru Sato, Dan Tamura of Evolution, and Francesco Akita when Izanagi cradles Akita at 4:54 in a skirmish to build up the 6-man tag title match, which, as we mentioned, got moved over to the 16th at Oda Ward Gym, the Champions Night. Tajiri, Okuto Omori, and Kumarashi and Yusuke Kodama get the win over Yoshitatsu, Takao Omori, Black Minzode, and Yuki Honda when Omori pins Minzode with the Muso Isan at 7:23 in the first match of the Champions Carnival. Ashino picks up a win here over Koji Doi, a trader in Infanteribles at 8:46 with the ankle lock. This was a big psychological win for Ashino. Ashino getting a small measure of revenge for Doi and the rest of the company of formerly of Infanterible, now Total Eclipse, betraying him right before the carnival started. Sort of a thing that just completely, I'm sure, destroyed the morale of Ashino heading in there, thinking that he had his boys with him from Wrestle 1, only to see that just burn up in the flames. The World Junior Heavyweight title skirmish, which was also the very first appearance of, drumroll, Strong Hearts. Sema shows up with T-Hawk and El Lindemann, who is in tow with his 2 junior heavyweight titles from 0-1. I'm not sure if you're all keeping count, but El Lindemann is the world, I think it was NWA World Junior Heavyweight, as well as the International Junior Heavyweight Champion over at 0-1 and double unified Junior Heavyweight titles. They get the win in their debut as a trios against Koji Iwamoto, Atsuki Aoyagi, and Rising Hayato when Sema uses the Spartan cut on Aoyagi at 9:26. Yuma gets a big win over Kohei Sato with the Japanese leg roll clutch hold. Shuji Ishikawa gets the win over his former BFF, former partner in the Runaway Giants, Suwama, with the Giant Slam at 20:15. And in the main event, Jake Lee finally arrives, gets that big win over Kento with the D4C, the vertical suplex brainbuster at 27:48. Jake Lee wins the carnival. He goes now on to the 16th to challenge Suwama for the Triple Crown heavyweight title. This was, to me, the best night of the carnival. The first night definitely kicked us off in the right direction. There's no denying that. But I definitely think this was the one, right? This was a fantastic show, up and down. We had really good wrestling all the way across. Ashino getting his big win over Doi. I felt like this could go on longer. I wanted more out of them, but I'm pretty sure we'll get it in time, as Ashino is wanting to get revenge on Total Eclipse for betraying him. The appearance of Strong Hearts is, of course, another mystery to us because we don't know how long they'll be around for. They might be just closing up their commitments. Sema is, of course, going to defend the World Junior Heavyweight title against Koji Iwamoto on the 16th at Champions Night at Oda Ward Gym. And so it does make you wonder. We have definitely gone on and linked to talking about this whole GLEAT situation as regards to All Japan and what what could be, what we're speculating. But yeah, we're just gonna keep tuning in and see what the deal is on that. Yuma getting the win over Sato is huge. I think Yuma needed a big win to cap off this carnival. If he wasn't going to win the whole thing, then at the very least you got to send him out on a high note, which was a win over Sato. And Sato effectively eliminated from, being there at the top of the ladder. Yeah, top of the ladder of the carnival. Shuji Ishikawa getting the win over Suwama was the right move. While Suwama is the Triple Crown Heavyweight Champion, Ishikawa is the Gaora TV Champion, I do feel as though Ishikawa needed a big win here to say that he's still on the top of the ladder in terms of All Japan and in terms of credible Triple Crown challengers, as the road kind of seems to be just about done for Suwama. And if he does not lose to Jake Lee, I would be really surprised. Really surprised. But to top it all off, Jake winning over Kento. This was long overdue. I called this right at the beginning. Yuma versus Jake would have been a hell of a final as well. But the win here is what Jake needed to get the rub to say he is ready for the big time, ready for the Triple Crown, because Kento was the bane of Jake's existence, and just getting 3 back-to-back singles wins over Jake, and you kind of had to feel that if you had been following the last couple of years, that if Jake was going to get over as somebody who was going to be a top dog, he needed to do it by getting a win over his former tag partner and BFFF in Extreme. Kento, this was by far one of the best matches of the year for All Japan. If you're an All Japan fan, if you're a Jake Lee fan, if you're a Kento fan, you already know these guys can't have a bad match with each other. But I have to say, this is probably the best match they've had singles, period.
Right.
End discussion. Right there. I said it. And the best part is I went 5 for 5. So I was pretty happy about that. And, after the last night going 0 for 5, technically speaking. But this time I went 5 for 5. Feeling good on that. Matt, what are your thoughts?
I was 3 out of 4 for that one.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the only one I got wrong was Ashino and Koji Doi, since I figured Ashino would be tied. Like, okay, need one more win to get close, but Koji ruins it, but that didn't happen. So with that, Ashino winning was the better move.
Right.
For that regard. And it shows how technical Koji can be in the ring. Like, he can do chain wrestling. And he did it well.
Right.
If Ashino is going to go after Total Eclipse, I think him beating Doi is like the good first step. So maybe, and especially after how Jake kind of squashed him the first day, he's going to want that payback.
Right.
For sure. So I think that will definitely lead to something.
Mm-hmm.
I love how Carmelo Ito is not in any of these skirmishes for the 6-man tag belts.
He's busy selling cars and sponsoring other wrestling promotions.
I know, but still, come on.
Yeah, I hear you.
You can't just defend the title and not show up.
Yeah. Well, I guess he can because he's the money mark, but hey, whatever.
Well, then I hope he gets pinned at the title match.
So
by Hokuto.
Yeah. So what about the other matches?
Okay, I was getting to that. I was happy to see Strong Hearts that finally for T-Hawk and El Lindemann.
You've been talking about wanting T-Hawk for a while. Now you got him.
I know, and then Steven said he was going to bring him, so I kind of thought he was going to be in the carnival, but that did not happen. It's like, damn it. But I get they have other commitments and dates too, so.
Mm-hmm.
Oh well, but it was still a solid 6-man tag despite all that. So I was happy with that, and hopefully we'll see more. I guess with Sema and Koji, it all depends. Like whoever wins, I guess we'll find out what's really going on with GLEAT.
Right.
Like if Koji wins, they're probably gone, and if Sema stays, then it's either they can't really do shows with the lockdown since they're basically still a new promotion, or just maybe we're actually gonna hopefully do a partnership and he'll probably drop it at the Junior Battle for Glory next month.
Right. That is something to think about too. Is that there is the Junior Battle of Glory that is going to be happening on the 2nd and the 3rd of next month, and so it is possible that Iwamoto loses to CIMA, and CIMA stays on top until a winner of the Junior Battle of Glory happens, and maybe what happens is Iwamoto wins that, and he winds up winning it again later in the month.
That or they actually make a new junior star.
Yeah, but my point I wanted to get to was that CIMA holding onto that title isn't exactly killing the notoriety of the junior heavyweight division nor the junior heavyweight title, because more people are just barely getting to hear that CIMA is the All Japan World Junior Heavyweight Champion, and so they're just kind of started barely getting to get some kind of interest from the outside of All Japan, which is, I believe, what the move they were trying to make by bringing in CIMA and possibly killing the relationship with Dragon Gate. But we've talked about that in the past, in a few episodes past, and so if you're interested in our thoughts on that, please feel free to go and check those out as well. But overall, the feeling is that this may have jeopardized their relationship with Dragon Gate. But the important thing to remember is that in the meantime, at the very least, the Junior Battle of Glory is going to happen, is going to be sponsored by Garo Sports, and it does present an opportunity to at least have somebody else take the junior heavyweight title away from CIMA. Now, there's a third thought I want to enter into real quick, which is that we might be seeing somebody else from the outside who has been in the title hunt in the last year or two finally get their due. I'm looking at somebody like Fuminori Abe. Right now, it's entirely possible Abe gets the win over CIMA, right? Because they've definitely had interactions with each other, and it just really depends on Abe's participation in All Japan if it's going to increase. Because if he's defending it outside of All Japan more than he's defending it inside of All Japan, I might take issue with that. But Abe is a good friend of Iwamoto. They were in the Jin stable before that got dissolved by Jake in his turn to the dark side. But I would not think that it is not out of question that Abe maybe gets a run with the junior heavyweight title. He is not a All Japan shoeborn by any sense, but he is definitely somebody that can work extremely well with Iwamoto. They had their junior title match earlier in the year, and if you've seen them in their interactions, they work so well together. So I would think that maybe then, if the GLEAT relationship with All Japan is still going, Iwamoto would take the belt from Abe. Iwamoto says, I want CIMA later in the year, and he gets his hands on CIMA, and he manages to retain it then. Sort of a shade of Yuji Nagata and Kazuyuki Fujita. Now, for those that are not familiar, and I'm going to side tangent it real quick, but Nagata was scheduled to take the IWGP Heavyweight title from Fujita. Fujita suffered a legit injury in a K1 fight and coughed up the title, and it wound up being Tadao Yasuda that wound up winning the IWGP Heavyweight title, only for Nagata to come back and win it from Yasuda. And when Fujita and Nagata hooked back up, lots of folks thought that Fujita was going to take the belt away from Nagata again, except he didn't. And Nagata wound up looking even stronger after that title defense, having gotten over that hump because it was Fujita who beat him to retain the IWGP Heavyweight title just about a year before. So I could see a shade of that happening here. It's a little far gone, maybe, right? But we do know that Iwamoto and Abe have a history. We do know that Abe does work a fair amount of different promotions. It's not crazy to think that, Abe might not want to work in All Japan for a couple of months, maybe not exclusively, but predominantly I could see it happening. I really do, especially with BJW having sort of a downturn right now financially, and of course Abe is a part of Basara, which means he can get work practically anywhere he wants to. But I do think that there's that strong connection between Iwamoto and Abe. I think that story is not completely told yet, and if Abe was able to get the belt away from CIMA, it would be something. It would be something that Abe would be able to rub in Koji's face to say, "Hey, I got the belt, and you couldn't get it from him." Right? That could only add to the tension between these two to make them have one hell of a junior heavyweight title match in the fall, possibly in the beginning of the winter. So that's my outlook.
Yuma being Kohei, that was a good idea. And the Carnival strong, and it made sense doing with a roll up instead of just the end game again. So again, it made it more unexpected. It worked with how Kohei manhandled him during the match in those 8 minutes. So good stuff there. Shuji and Suwama is like one of those they had to beat the crap out of each other to get that tension, because that was the first time they fought one-on-one after breaking up.
Right.
So, and it made sense for Shuji to win, just so it made it that way that Jake and Kenta was the real final instead of just a sudden death.
Right, and I do want to add too that Ishikawa and Suwama keeping it sparse in terms of their interactions is the smartest thing to do. Now they've only they only had a tag match against each other at that 0-1 Shrine show, right, where they had a whole bunch of different talent, different wrestlers from different organizations representing their promotions and having like offer matches, right? So keeping them apart is what's going to keep that rivalry fresh. I just wanted to add that.
Oh yeah, and with how Suwama was selling his neck, it could probably lead to something during the title match.
Mm-hmm.
With Jake and Kento, if we're going by in-ring, it was probably kind of the weakest, but storytelling-wise, it was excellent.
Right.
As again, it's all this whole thing. It's about Jake and his character progression, the heel turn. He had to win.
Right.
This was do or die for him in winning this, and he had to beat Kento. And it made sense that they were the last match to get that win. The match went by real quick. It didn't feel like 27 minutes at all.
Mm-hmm.
But with how they paced it, it worked. It worked out the advantage. You got exactly what you wanted all the way through, and it was still the right call. But with Jake now going to fight Suwama, this is a must.
Is he ready? Jake. Is he ready? Do you think he's ready?
I believe he is ready now. Like
okay.
he's finding his groove. He knows what he has to do.
Uh-huh.
And I think All Japan sees it too. But if he loses here, I think the fans will just give up on him.
Yeah.
At this point,
I would have to think
he kept losing. He kept losing to Kenzo. He lost
3 times in a row.
Yeah, he lost. He lost that like 3 times in a row. He lost to Zeus quickly at the Carnival last year. He hasn't been getting a break, and again, he's showing all this. And if he does not, then I feel like there's just no hope for that, and they're probably gonna focus on someone else.
Yeah,
like Yuma or maybe Nomura when he comes back. But this is a has to. Otherwise, all that momentum leading to how he is now it'll be wasted.
Right.
And I hate to see that.
Right. I agree with you. I think it's do or die for Jake. You got to pull the trigger now. He's got a good amount of heat on him from the match, from his performance in the Carnival. I think you got to pull the trigger on him. You got to give it to him now. So that leaves 2 more shows for the rest of May. The 16th at Oda Ward Gym. That's going to be Champions Night. And then there is Champions Night 2021 Shinkaiba Extra, which is happening 5 days later. They have not announced any matches for that one just yet, but let's run through that card just real quick. We are going to talk about it and give our predictions at the end of the show, but I just want to run through this lineup real fast because it's killer. It really, really is. So we have next streams Aoyagi and Hayato. I'm sorry, I should say Atsuki and Hayato teaming up with Francesco Akira, going up against the returning Strong Hearts. Representing GLEAT, T-Hawk, Lindemann, and this time Issei Onitsuka. They are going to be opening it up. One hell of an opener, I gotta say. In the Jumbo Tsuruta Memorial match, we've got Masanobu Fuchi, Shiroko Shinaka, Masahiko Takasugi, and Ryuji Hishikata going up against one of the founders of BJW and one of the head figures of it currently, Great Kojika, who is also a former All-Asian Tag Team Champion and has spent time in All Japan in the past, Shinichi Nakano, Osamu Nishimura, and Chikara. Now, we had talked about this last episode in talking about all of their ties to All Japan from the past. Shinichi Nakano was a Wonder Wookiee that I believe either inadvertently busted up Jumbo, or I think he got like a shock win over him or something like that. But Nakano, a very big guy, and so sizable compared to Jumbo, and managed to do some damage to him, and that was sort of his big claim to fame before he jumped over and left All Japan. Masahiko Takasugi, of course, formerly also known as Ultra 7, spent his couple of years in All Japan, a fair amount of it under a mask. And Ryuji Hishikata, of course, a former World Junior Heavyweight Champion, spent about a decade or so in All Japan exclusively before kind of branching out and starting to work different promotions. Was also working with Wrestle One. Kojika, as we mentioned, he's a founding member of BJW, former All-Asian Tag Team Champion, was around during the 70s, 80s of All Japan. Osamu Nishimura, of course, has been hanging around All Japan, kind of working the odd dates here and there, but his style definitely fits. And of course, Shikata, who's a member of the Momota family, is in here. My money is on him taking the fall. Shotaro Shino and Ryuki Honda, they will go up against Koji Doi and Kuma Arashi. Now, one thing I wanted to mention was that on the final night of the carnival, Honda actually came out to save Ashino, right? And actually German suplex Kuma Arashi. And so when I saw this, I think a lot of us were losing our shit, right? Because Honda is only going to grow from this this association of working with guys like Doi and Arashi, again, because they were all in Wrestle 1. But Honda just German suplex Arashi, and it looked beautiful. He had no struggle with it. And Kumarashi's a fairly sizable guy. But I was really excited to hear that this is going to go down. So this might actually be the match I'm looking forward to the most. We finally have our All Japan TV six-man tag team title match. Takao Mori, Black Menzode, and Karbo Ito. They will defend against Total Eclipse's Tajiri, Hokuto Omori, Yusuke Kodama. The All-Asian tag titles, as we had mentioned earlier in the tour, Tamura tapping out Izanagi, so that had warranted them a title shot. So Zeus and Izanagi, Purple Haze, one of the most dominant tag teams in All Japan in the last year. They will go up against Sato and Tamura. We will see the World Junior Heavyweight title held by CIMA being put up for grabs against Koji Iwamoto, arguably the top junior heavyweight star in All Japan right now. That will be one hell of a match. Looking forward to that. The All Japan World Tag Team titles will be up for grabs as Kento and Yuma will go up against the Twin Towers, Suji Ishikawa and Kohei Sato. I don't think it's outside of the realm that we could see new champions. The debuting twins, the former sumo wrestlers, Jun Saito and Dei Saito, who evidently make killer chonko from the stories that we hear from our friend Francesco Akira, they go up against Daisuke Sekimoto, who is no stranger to All Japan, and a All Japan trueborn from the Muto era, the current strong world heavyweight champion of BJW's, Yasufumi Nakanoe. So that is going to be a match that I think all eyes will be on to see how well that the twins hold up against two of Big Japan's strongest best wrestlers, really. The Road to Royal Strong Style, which is the different style matches and likeness to Inoki's style of different fights. The different martial arts fights is going to happen when Yoshitatsu takes on Yosuke Nishizima And finally, in the main event, Suwama will take on Jake Lee. And as we mentioned, there have been no matches that have been declared for the Shin Kaiba Extra show. That is also a Champions Night themed as well. That'll happen on the 21st. So that concludes all the immediate All Japan goings on for May. And we are going to take ourselves a little break. We'll be back after this musical selection. This is Dave and Matt, the hosts of SUWAMA'S Station. We'll be right back. And we're back. We have ourselves a fantastic interview with our friend Izaac. Izaac on Twitter, Izaac Wrestles. And he is a big fan of independent wrestling promotions in Japan, as some of us are. Maybe some of us are just more engaged into the big ones, Noah, DDT, All Japan, New Japan. But for some of us, we want a little more. Maybe we like a little spice in our variety of Japanese pro wrestling. And so our friend Izaac was actually one of the first ones as far as the English-speaking community of Japanese pro wrestling to go and dig further on what exactly Colega Pro Wrestling is and his thoughts on what's been going on with it the last few months. As they've been going since the beginning of January, but it's kind of had an up and down time with things. And as Izaac will explain in the interview, there's been some high points, there's been some low points. How long will they stick around? How are they getting funding? We talk about all these things in this awesome interview. We're going to go right to that. Hey, folks, how's it going? Dave, the drummer here, your awesome admin and one half of SUWAMA'S Station podcast for All Japan Worldwide Fan Group. We have a lot of fun talking with different guests and interviewing different folks that are, up and down the spectrum of pro wrestling, from actual pro wrestlers to folks that have been, covering Japanese pro wrestling for many years, such as, Fumi Saito and Roy Lucier and Bahu, Mr. Brett over working with all the FMW related stuff. Today is somebody I want to introduce. Awesome guy. We talk a lot through the Twitter. You can definitely see my age when I'm calling it the Twitter. And he's a fantastic guy. He's one hell of a person that I think has contributed a nice piece of the pie to English language Japanese pro wrestling community through Twitter. I want to introduce my guest, Mr. Izaac. Say hello to everybody.
Hello. I haven't heard that many nice words about me in a long time. It feels weird. Like I'm nowhere near. You've got. Sorry to the listeners today. Like you've just got some kid from Australia. You don't have any All Japan legends today, or any Fumi Saitos or Roy Lucius, some real legends of covering wrestling. But no, you've got me. I'm very happy to be here. I haven't done a podcast in a very long time. Well, and I like you guys. I don't listen to many podcasts. I don't know. I don't like a lot of wrestling nowadays, but I like listening to you two gentlemen, because you're humble and you have respect and manners, and you guys are good dudes.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, we don't try to come across as being know-it-alls. The main goal of the group itself is just to sort of like either discuss All Japan, past, present, or future, or at the very least just get people caught up as to what's going on with modern All Japan, because a lot of folks, they love the 80s and 90s and, maybe even some of the 70s and the Muto era, and that's all well and good, because you got to understand the past to really kind of get the most out of what's going on today. And, we just want to do that. That's our thing, is we want to just get people to say, hey, Kento is the man. Suwama is still like the wall. You know, you got Jake Lee coming up. You got Yuma coming up. You got guys like Ashino and Doi that are slowly surging, you know, getting into form where they're going to compete for the Triple Crown. You've got amazing young talent like Dan Tamura and Atsuki Aoyagi. You know, All Japan is a really good product. You know, a lot of people like to say it's niche, and that's all cool. You know, we understand that. You know, Japanese pro wrestling on a whole is still fairly niche, but you know what? You know, we think we feel like we're doing our job, you know, which is just to keep people sort of in the loop as to what's going on now. But today I asked Izaac to come on. So for folks that are not in the know, the Bodyguard, right? Bodyguard have been working All Japan the last couple of years, mostly teaming with Zeus, right, and his tag partner in Osaka Pro. We were just talking about that before with the interview, and the Osaka Big Guns team, multiple-time World Tag Team Champions. And Bodyguard sort of was not working so much in All Japan, but working with Sekimoto over in BJW. You fast forward until he recovered from his what was it, his knee problem, right? Was it a knee problem?
Yeah, he blew out his knee
right
on an All Japan show.
Right, and so Bodyguard has to cough up his half of the BJW Tag Team Championship, and he just lays low. He lays low, and he recovers from that, and he shows up on the first All Japan show of the year, and then a new project.
Singing.
Yes,
that was so weird.
Yes, he's singing to his theme too.
Love it.
Yeah, and so Bodyguard announces, you know, he's going to have a new promotion. It's called Colega, and it's styled very much like Osaka Pro Wrestling. And, you know, here's this guy that I see on Twitter, and he's given us the 411 on Colega, and I'm like, I got to get this guy on the show because, I mean, it's not an offshoot of All Japan per se, but if you look at the shows, there is a fair amount of shared talent that is on there of either former All Japan wrestlers or guys that are working through Land's End or wrestlers that will eventually show up in All Japan. So, Izaac, why don't we start from the beginning? How did you first hear about Colega Pro Wrestling?
Well, I've been covering Japanese wrestling in one way or another since I was about 16 in 2016. I used to write for a few sites, and I had a podcast for a while, and I've always just been into the quote unquote sleazy Japanese pro wrestling and the stuff that doesn't get covered. This promotion, Colega, I didn't know what it was. They just started announcing people coming up.
Yeah.
If you remember. For anybody that remembers, in the early days on Twitter, they just randomly kept popping up with guys, Osaka Pro guys like Tsubasa, Billy Ken Kid, and then like Hibiscus Me, Apple Miyuki, she used to wrestle in Osaka Pro. Like all these names and like the whole Strong Hearts group, Shima, everyone got announced. So I was wondering what it was, but there was no press. So Bodyguard actually said, because he ended up sharing the article, and he said, this is the first website that's covered my new promotion. He didn't receive any like sort of anything in the pro wrestling magazines or even on one of the Japanese news websites, because it would have got covered. Nobody was covering it. I believe me and Robert on Twitter were the only ones that were like,
shout out to Robert.
Going on? Yeah, he's a good dude.
Mm-hmm.
Where was I? We're talking about and then so we got Colega happen, and they seem very professional. Like now, going in, I'm sure their ideas were to be Osaka Pro, but now as the months have gone on, they're more like an Okinawa Pro, where they're getting anywhere from 10 to 40 people a show, and they're running the 5 days a week, 6 days a week. Sorry, they're running Monday through to Sunday, and I probably wouldn't have. there's been 5 other promotions that have started in Japan in 2021, but they're just sporadic indies. They run a show every 1 to 3 months per se. They're not promotions that are going to give guys livings. I don't think Colega's paying any big bills or any means, but it's consistent work for a lot of these guys and girls that don't wrestle this much. Hibiscus Me has wrestled 68 matches for the promotion this year, and the promotion's been active since January 24th, around that time.
Yes.
Yusutaka Osera is a Michinoku pro guy,
Right.
and he's one of the best promising young talents Michinoku has had for a long, long time. And like, he's a few years in, and he's getting seasoning now wrestling guys. He's wrestled close to 60 matches for Colega. Like, all these guys are getting lots and lots of work, guys and girls, sorry. And that drew me to the promotion, that there is so much free wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
It's live every night. What's the time right now? It's
almost 2 a.m. here.
Yeah, in Colega starts in 20 minutes live. It's free wrestling 6 nights a week, and a lot of the English audience, once they caught on to it, they all thought it was cool too, because it's a bodyguard. Like, there wasn't anyone. I mean, I can't say this is, how do you put it? I don't know if it's the cleanest company in the world.
Right.
I mean, they've got, out of nowhere, Bodyguard has his own arena. Like a 300-seat arena, and it's gorgeous. It's got this like VIP area. He's done a very, very good job, and he's so far rented it out twice to one promoter that held a wrestling show there a couple days ago, Wrestle Addiction, and there was a MMA show there a couple months ago, and that sold out, and there were like 300 people crammed in there. Most they've been in the Colega studio.
Right.
No, Colega's just wild, and at the start it was so interesting, and there were so many outside fans out of Japan, Gaijin fans, that wanted to follow. But as we're in May now,
mm-hmm.
which is wild anyway, but a lot of those fans have dwindled. And I don't know if you can tell by Twitter engagement, but even me, for the first 2 months, I watched near every night. I do a match of the month every month, where I do like a top 10 list or whatever of matches of the month. And I'd go back and I'd watch all the Colega matches I thought were worth watching, because you just go on to Cage Match or Wrestling Data, and they have them every day. It has all the cards. Like, it's 25, 26 days
mm-hmm.
of free wrestling, and
mm-hmm.
all the cards are there. So I used to just go pick and choose what looked awesome. They don't have anyone signed. And like, the only person affiliated with the brand is Bodyguard, but they've pretty much absorbed Land's End.
Right.
Land's End has only held one show in front of 30 people this year.
Right.
And like, forever I've been wondering how Land's End stays alive, how they have 7 or 8 guys under the Land's End banner, yet they run no shows, and like half the guys never wrestle. But it's only been since Colega, for guys like Daimonji So, UX Style, Revlon, guys like that are wrestling 40, 50, 60 matches already.
Right.
They would have wrestled 5 or 6 matches, maybe 10 matches in a regular calendar year if they were wrestling full Land's End. You'd be familiar with, you're familiar with Ryuji Sai and Daimonji So.
Oh yeah.
From Land's End that came into All Japan.
Right.
Like Daimonji So, they've always been in like tag matches where he would come in, kick a few people, take a few bumps. You can never really see what the guy has.
Right.
But in a place like Colega, he's allowed to wrestle 5 to 15 minutes, 5-6 times a week. Like, I think it's really good for the scene, but I don't know the legs on it, and that's one of the big questions that everybody had when the promotion started, especially in COVID era. Like, how is this company going to manage to stay afloat, booking 4 matches a night, sometimes in front of 10 people? And they're getting that little of an audience early on that they had to bring in. After a few weeks, they brought in this thing. If you paid 200,000 yen, 250,000 yen, you get tickets to Colega all year long. And tickets on a regular night are like 4,000, 5,000 yen, I think.
Okay.
So yeah, they're really looking for people to come to their shows, and it's only been the last couple months where I think they're reaching out to the audience in Japan more. Like, I wouldn't say that they were catering to the US or Western fans earlier on, but they don't care about their opinions.
Right.
Not that it matters. Like, I'm not a person that will angrily tweet Bodyguard, "Why are you booking this guy on Twitter?" But you do see it a lot.
Oh, yeah.
You've seen it a lot the last few months.
I have, yes.
If it was a big deal for them, they would have stopped, but clearly they don't. And I think like the fans in the building don't care. Like, they draw more. So they've been drawing more fans. That being said, like, they struggle. Yeah, they struggle to get 20 most nights.
Yeah,
and like, even that is somewhat impressive in COVID era. But yeah, you just wonder the legs on the promotion. You'd like to see a promotion like this stay around for 4 years and give consistent work to guys and girls, but goodness gracious. And they book good talent. That's the thing. Like, they booked Shima so often.
Yes.
And, like, he doesn't come cheap, obviously, but Shima was wrestling in front of 10 to 15 people for, like, a few weeks in a row. How many... he wrestled 17 matches in Colega this year. I'd say he's done in Colega now since GLEAT and, you know, a couple little All Japan gigs he's doing. But no, he wrestled him, Shima, T-Hawk, Lindemann, Issei Onitsuka.
Yeah.
Irie's still there. So since the Strong Hearts, yeah. I keep skipping forward, please. I've spoken about the beginnings. Where would we like to go from here?
Well, okay, so we talked about how you got invested into it, what was, you know, your curiosity, and then, you know, like you said, you were doing, you know, you were covering, like, matches of the night, or you were covering, you know, X amount of matches, like your recommended matches, right? So your coverage was fairly extensive, and it dropped off, right? And it seems like that was just an overall arcing thing where a lot of Westerners, or maybe just a lot of fans in general, were kind of like, the interest dropped off, right? So let me ask you this, right? Why do you think the interest kind of dropped off? Is it because they're kind of using the same talent? Is it overkill? Is it overkill that they have so many matches on so many days out of the week? Like, I mean, it really does seem like, you know, you make 2 solid points. Let's go back to your points real quick. They're using solid talent. They're giving talent. They're giving these talented wrestlers like Oasera from Michinoku Pro. They're giving them a chance to really get some seasoning, right? Because Michinoku Pro does not run a lot of shows.
Not at all.
Yeah, if you folks aren't familiar, Michinoku Pro, you know, they've always been a regional promotion. They work out of the northeast section of Japan, and there was a time where they were a very hot indie. They were running a fair amount of dates, but that was like mid 90s, and as it got closer to the 2000s it started dropping off. And so now you do have Michinoku Pro still around. They do still train new wrestlers, as you can see with Osera, but at the same time, they're not running a lot of shows, and so sometimes you'll see guys, competing in different groups. You'd see that with Shinzaki kind of showing up here, there, and everywhere. Like that's kind of just been his MO. But significant is the fact that Dick Togo, right? Dick Togo, when he came back to Japan, he re-signed with Michinoku Pro. However, it wasn't as lucrative, or just as the work wasn't as plentiful as he had wanted it to be. And now he's working over in New Japan as a part of the Bullet Club and this new incarnation of it. But the point,
he's still with Michinoku Pro.
Yeah, he's just picking up the side gig with New Japan to make that money. That's what I'm one of the biggest Dick Togo fans ever. And when he came back to Japan and signed with Michinoku Pro, I was like, oh, it's awesome. Maybe Michinoku Pro can come back hard, because they used to hold shows in front of 8,000 people. Yeah,
they were huge at one point.
They really were.
And I think if you ask all tape traders, I think Michinoku Pro tapes are up there with what everybody wanted back in the day.
Yes,
it'd be a lot of deathmatch stuff, obviously, and
right.
all that stuff was sort of sought after. But anyway, Michinoku Pro.
Yes,
another thing.
You're getting all these awesome talent a chance, right? Guys and girls. They're getting seasoning. They're steady work there. They're getting a chance to show their stuff, right, on a consistent basis, right? So that's a plus, right? And again, most of these folks, you'd see them in other promotions doing tag work, but here, they're actually able to kind of get more time on the spot, and the spotlight's on them, right? And these are good things, right? But at the same time, it's very clear there has been a drop off in interest. So why do you think that is?
All right, this may take a moment.
Sure.
There've been 55 talents of years this year, and some of the most popular names on that list are Kuma Arashi, Fuminori Abe, Kichi Sato, the Strong Hearts, Quiet Storm's been regular, Billy Ken Kid. These are sort of the bigger names. Naiki Tanizaki. All guys that are awesome. The thing is, what people forget is they're not going to go out there and put on a fantastic balls to the wall match in front of 11 people. There's a lot of people going in half motion. And after the first month or two, they really just did the same matches over and over, and nobody. I wasn't going to watch the fourth incarnation of Bodyguard versus Rojisai. And a lot of the matches, the whole company is based around Land's End versus Team Bodyguard and his friends. And Land's End every few weeks steals a talent, and a Sarah's Land's End affiliated now. Doesn't really mean anything. But yeah, the whole story of the promotion is Land's End versus Bodyguard, and all the Land's End matches for the first month or 2 months, just was hocus pocus, DQ finishes, countouts, the most lame DQ finishes or powder. It was so repetitive in the same finishes over and over, and especially in front of 10 people in the COVID clap era.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was just like, what am I doing with my time?
Right.
And the viewers dropped off, and they knew that, and I think it's too late for a lot of Western people now. Like, for me, I haven't watched promotion in 2 months, even though now, for the last month or two, they've been booking a lot of better talents, a lot of young, good indie guys.
Right.
Guys like Jun Masaoka, Alejandro, FG Mask, even Abe, Yoshihiro Horiguchi, all these young guys who I'd be interested in, and like matches that look really good, but in front of 25 people, and you know that a lot of the matches, a lot of guys are putting in half the effort, and half the matches on the card are going to be screwy. And it was just very, very repetitive. For me, that's why I stopped watching the promotion, because I'm not going to watch something and just because, like, yay, I'm watching Japanese wrestling, yay. No, it sucked. It was the same boring stuff all the time. I'd rather go watch wrestling I enjoy. That being said, there was really good matches there, and there was 1 or 2 matches every month that was worth watching. But for the most part, for the Monday to Friday shows, it was pretty lame. The Saturday nights could get pretty interesting, as they're the bigger shows of the week and bigger audience of the week. But what lost everybody else seemed to be the use of outside talent that aren't popular and have done bad things. Dylan James, Joe Giotani. They started booking those guys. Dylan James debuted. He's funny enough, Dylan James. You know Dylan James. It was All Japan podcast.
Oh yeah.
You guys know, listeners who know Dylan James.
Yes.
Former. He has a wild career. Like he tried to make it and evolve in WWE back in the day, and Gabe said he was crap. So he came to Japan, and he was in 0-1 for a very, very long time. And then 0-1 drama happened, boom, out of 0-1. The 0-1 drama was involving an underage Joshi wrestler, and it's a whole nother story for another day, and most people know about it. He's not... I don't know if he was ever the internet's most favorite wrestler, but you mentioned that name on Twitter, and it's on English wrestling Twitter, and yeah, nobody likes him. And the English-speaking fans made that quite prevalent, and a lot of them stopped watching once they started using Dylan James. And I think it got even worse once Joe Giotani, another guy who has a past with touching children, I don't know how to put it, I'm dumb, I'm 21, leave me alone, did such shit when they were of age with girls that were below age. Right. And, you know, it's a different. I tell people all the time, it's a different world over there. Whereas you used to do a podcast, would call them Scandals in the Rough, and would talk about all the scandals in Puro, and a lot of those guys that are involved in scandals are untouched, and their reputations are intact, and nothing is different. Speaking out, whatever the US and UK scenes have done the last couple years, like how big everyone's been on speaking about sexual assault, violence, this, that, the other, and Japan are very behind the times, and you see just too much stuff gets just pushed under the rug, or you know.
This is very true. I'm glad you're bringing these points up, because this is something we often don't talk about on the podcast, but I mean, it's definitely something that exists, right? It's something that people kind of don't want to talk about, right? Because these things happen, and you're right. A fair amount of these people that they fuck up, somewhere along the line, and their legacies, remain, pretty much unscathed, right? And this has been going on for generations and generations in pro wrestling, all the way back to like the 70s, maybe even further back than that. Hell, it was probably around when Mikitozan was, active and was, doing his thing and still alive. But I'm very glad that you bring up these points because, yeah, you have these wrestlers misconduct, right? They can't just keep their shit straight. They're people too, sure, but at the same time, they're not public figures like pro wrestlers are, because that's exactly what pro wrestlers are. They're public figures. They go out there, you see their faces, you associate their faces to a wrestling promotion, and it's like, oh yeah, I really love this guy. I was a really big Kensuke Sasaki fan, and then you find out about the whole thing with Gonpei, the student that was killed in the dojo, and the whole thing that kind of broke down from that. Hiroshi Hase feeling like this is all on him, and so he winds up leaving New Japan and winds up jumping to All Japan, and then things of that nature, and a lot of people talk about it, but it's definitely something to talk about because it exists. It's a real thing. It's still happening now. The most, Otani and James being two very recent examples of that. And it was a real shame because Jun Akiyama, from what I understand, was somebody that vouched for James. Like he liked him and was like, hey, I think we can salvage this guy. And then James is improving and things are getting better. And yeah, he did have that stigma around him from what had happened in 0-1. But a lot of folks were kind of hoping, hey, he's cleaning his act up, he's getting his shit together, he's trying to kind of mend his ways. And everything's looking good, and he wins the Real World Tag League with Joe Doring, and then all of a sudden the bottom just drops out, and you can't put your hands on the fans, which is pretty much what happened. And All Japan has a zero tolerance policy to it, so they just pretty much said peace. So. If you're not informed, we just informed you. but it was a real shame because I myself was starting to kind of feel like James was starting to get to this upper echelon of like he was beginning to work on the problems that he had, not just in the ring but personally. And then the bottom dropped out, and he winds up in Colega, and the reaction of the English-speaking fan base of Japanese pro wrestling was just up in arms. Literally, people saying, "Who won't Colega hire?" Right? It goes to your point. It's like once they started seeing that, it was pretty much like they were.
It was game over for a lot of international fans.
Yes, absolutely.
Game over.
So that's one thing, right? And then you mentioned, kind of the same matchups. We kind of see it, and then they're not really giving it, all of their spirit, all of it, in terms of like bringing it, right? They're only partially bringing it because, like you said, they have a hard time just getting more than 20, 40 fans to the shows, and it's a real shame. But I will keep my eye on the developments that happen in Colega, but I find something very interesting, which is the fact that there's a lot of talent that kind of goes back and forth between All Japan and Colega, right? Mostly it's like Bodyguard, Ryoji Sai, Alejandro more recently, right? But you don't see All Japan working with Colega, right? And I find that very interesting. I find that very interesting because at the very least you would have thought, oh, maybe we'll throw them a bone, let them have a couple of guys, Francesco Akira, Dance Hamada, somebody in that nature. And it's just like, no, you have not seen any All Japan guys on Colega at all, right?
A year and a half ago now, when Triple H was in talks with All Japan and Akiyama was going to come over here, one of Triple H's comments were that All Japan present a like a high quality product.
Mm-hmm.
They don't look low rent. And I don't know, if you're sending these talents to wrestle in front of 10, 20 people, like how good of a look that would put on your promotion.
It's true.
Like Akira Francesca's not going to be drawing 50 people to a Colega show. He's not drawing any. Like, a good dude, like good wrestler, and like he's got fans in Japan, but nobody is going to come buy tickets to see him or Ryuki Honda. Like, so instead of All Japan, they've sort of just started a relationship with Big Japan, like very, very recently.
Right, Daiichi's been working some shows over there, right?
Yeah, and Sekimoto now. Sekimoto's did the weekend show.
Right. But let's talk a little bit more about. We were talking about it before the interview, but let's kind of let's kind of like bring in some of what we were talking about beforehand. So we were talking that Osaka, right, Pro Wrestling, right, is where both Zeus and Bodyguard came from, right? That's like where they got their start. Yeah, that's where they got their start from, right? So Colega is inspired by Osaka Pro Wrestling, not exactly, trying to be just like Osaka Pro, but the consistencies of what you see in terms of like the frequency of how often they are running. Plus, if I'm not mistaken, Osaka Pro Wrestling's big shows were like Saturday night shows, if I'm not mistaken, back in the day. And so, Bodyguard gets inspired, and I agree. It does. It's sort of like, okay, so Bodyguard has this arena, right? He has this small arena, just kind of like, all right, that's cool.
Out of nowhere.
Yeah, out of nowhere, right?
Nowhere.
And Osaka, they had their own. I think they still have it. They have their own arena for Osaka Pro Wrestling, right? And
Osaka's pro's dead.
Oh, I mean, like back in the day, like when they were running.
Oh yeah, they had that little thing where people could sit around the ring, and it was a cool little arena. I've got many shows that are at that arena. It's one of my favorites.
And the interesting thing, and which a lot of people don't know about, is that Osaka Pro was actually owned by a company that was gearing Osaka Pro Wrestling back in the day to be like family friendly, right? I should correct myself. At the very beginning, it wasn't exactly like that, because you had groups like LOV, which is like Legion of Violence, and so like Dick Togo and all these other guys, they were just running roughshod, and so it wasn't as PG as it gets to be in like 2001, 2002, 2003, and so forth. But that the company is very oriented toward family entertainment, so it's like the least violent wrestling that you're gonna see, but it doesn't necessarily make it like bad wrestling. It was just sort of like, you're not gonna expect to see anybody bleeding. You're not gonna expect to see lots of swearing in the promos and what have you. But so Osaka Pro, sort of like a archetype for what Colega is sort of kind of trying to shoot for, and I mean, they're really trying to shoot for it, but I don't see them getting to be on that level of love.
They don't have the youth. They don't have baby faces.
Right.
They don't have people that like you really care about. The biggest guy they were building up for months was Yusutaka Sera, and then now he's just joined Land's End, and it sort of just quashed it. Like, Osaka Pro, they had a goal, they had a vision. They scooped up all the best young independent talents that weren't signed anywhere, and they said, all right, if you're going to work here, we want to book you, we want to sign you, you're going to be under this gimmick. And that's what all the guys did. Toronori Fujita, Magnitude Kishiwada, Akinori Suoka, Kushinova Kamen, Kikutaro, Like all these guys were indie guys beforehand, and then Osaka Pro just sort of came in, swooped them up, put them under their own banner.
Mm-hmm.
They did have money,
Yes.
something that Colega, like, they have money, but how much money? How much money are they losing? There's just a lot of questions left unanswered,
Yes.
and it is such a different world. Like if this was running in some midtown place in Albuquerque and in front of 20, 30 people every night, nobody's going to talk about it.
Right.
No, like nobody's going to talk about like. But because it's Japan, because it's like there's well-known wrestlers, because like Sekimoto, there's guys that have wrestled, like wrestling for Colega, that have main evented buildings in front of 10,000 people. Like the Osaka Pro guys have main evented 8,000, 10,000 seat buildings.
Right.
Shima, look at all the guys there. Like they've got it all. It's just not clicking.
Right.
It has, and I don't know if it's ever going to grow. It's more, do they last the COVID era?
Right.
Do they pass this era and go into the next chapter for them, which would be trying to be Okinawa Pro, Osaka Pro, drawing more than 10, 20 people a show. But who knows if they can do that. And the thing with the cameras at Colega, like you can't tell how many people are there. Like they used to, but they changed their seating because it looks so bad.
Yeah.
There'd be like one person in the crowd every night.
I did notice that.
Yeah, so they changed the seats around, and now you can't tell how many people are there. So, like for the first few shows, I didn't know if there was actually fans there or if it was just the wrestlers off screen clapping.
Right.
Like it was dreadful for a bit, and they were slow to get off the ground, and then they picked up, and I think they're just sort of steady now. But they're not making money. They're losing money. Lots of money.
Yeah, I can't argue with that, just because it does kind of seem like, again, it's like a free promotion, right? You can watch majority of it on YouTube, and it's like
every show.
Where is the money at for these guys then? I mean, where is it? You know,
how he does it, where he's getting the money from. If you've ever followed Bodyguard on social media, he has money, but like you see this all the time. I've been following independent sleazy wrestling for so long. Everybody has this passion. They want to hold a promotion. They want something to their name where they feel that it's theirs, and like this is probably something he's wanted since he started into wrestling. He's wanted a promotion he could call his own.
Right.
But how long is he going to keep putting up the bill for something that's losing money? You see it all the time. Promotions open, they fold, they go dormant. You don't hear anything from them. But I don't know what happens from here, dude. I really don't. There's that much new wrestling, and when crowds are allowed to come back more, there's going to be even more promotions come out of the woodwork and want to open shows. And it's so hard because they all book the same talent.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, like the top indies, a lot of the guys, they bounce around. Like VKF, they use Billy Ken Kid, they use Jun Masaoka, they use Yoshihiro Horiguchi. I could quite store them. There's so many guys that are used in Dove, TTT, Grace Pro. Like there's like a lot of these guys are just guys you see other places wrestling against guys. Like they're wrestling against the same guys. But I don't know. A lot of people don't have anything to do. I think it's there for that. Just take it as free puro that isn't that good, but it's an hour and sometimes 2 hours of free wrestling. Don't get your knickers in a knot over it. You're not paying for it. It's there,
Would you say it's better than Onita Pro?
No.
Wow.
And Onita Pro was terrible, but it was good terrible.
Yeah.
It wasn't. No, Onita Pro had some fun undercard matches. They had like Jintaro and Takashi Sasaki and Onru Mikami. Like they had those guys in the openers doing some stuff, but towards the main event, so Onita Pro was just it was just Onita running around in the crowd for 15 minutes and doing his theatre.
Yeah.
In 2021, he's basically got his own promotion. He's got Sanshiro Takagi that's basically saying, yep, come in here and hit people with an exploding bat for 8 minutes.
Oh God, I swear, Onita. He's definitely somebody that if you're not acquainted with him, and a fair amount of our listeners, I'm pretty sure they know of him. But I mean, you really gotta check out Bahu's whole rundown of Onita, because it just seriously reads like wow. You're just up and down, up and down, up and down his whole career. And, I feel for him for one aspect, which was that he tried so long to get an exploding death match in the U.S. He tried, and it just never happened. And I would have thought, hell, at ECW's prime, how did it not happen, right? But, I mean, I'm sure there was something that was in the way. And I'm sure Brett's talked about it, and he's got a pretty solid idea. But me personally, I'm just man, I wish it had happened. It was like XPW was this close. They were this close, and they couldn't get it off the ground.
Yeah. Japan, sure, he's God, but yeah, too many risks.
No, I totally agree. I think you hit the nail right on the head there. We have had a fantastic time. We're going to have to do this again at some point, find, something else to talk about in recent, All Japan goings on, because I know you're a fan of All Japan as well. And, we've discussed it before on the podcast. There's a lot of different promotions out there right now, folks. And, we never try to discourage people from enjoying what you enjoy, because, I mean, America, Japan, they both have a lot of wrestling product out there, and we don't mean to discourage you from enjoying what you like, but this is an All Japan related podcast, and so we're going to tend to kind of gravitate towards All Japan past, present, and future, and side tangents such as Colega, which isn't an All Japan affiliate, but there's definitely a story, and there's definitely ties that share between Colega and All Japan, and that's why we had on Mr. Izaac on the show, because I kind of felt that this was a story that a lot of people would be curious about, because, again, Bodyguard was working consistently in All Japan for years, and then that kind of drops off as Zeus gets that, singles push. He starts becoming, a big deal as a singles wrestler, and Bodyguard only occasionally shows up in All Japan now. But now folks will understand he's been busy toiling away with Colega. Anyways, Izaac, thank you for coming on the show. And, how can folks get a hold of you, if they want to, talk with you and follow you?
I've got purointherough.com. That's my website. I launched in December. I launched it on Christmas Day. The real deep sleeves. That's what I cover on my website. Puro in the Rough on Twitter.
Okay.
Puro in the Rough. That's the handle. purointherough.com's the website.
Mm-hmm.
I used to my Twitter for me is Izaac Wrestles. I used to wrestle. I don't anymore because I got lazy.
He's honest, folks. I like that. He's honest.
No, I don't know. Maybe one day. But I post more, I don't know, normal stuff on there. I still post about wrestling, but if you're interested about the sleazy Japanese wrestling scene, Yeah, just pure in the rough. It's all wrestling, no personal stuff.
Okay. Awesome, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. Take
Yeah,
care.
no,
Thank you.
no, thank you so much for coming on, Isaac. We love Isaac. We love the work that he does. He's a fantastic guy. Please go make sure you check out his website and you go check him out on Twitter because he is always very, very insightful. So, we've got a couple of news bits that just hit our plate, if I'm not mistaken, right, Matt?
Yep, we got Zuji Ishikawa at, I believe it was Kyushu Pros. And we got that, so it was kind of good to see Shuji go into the promotions.
It was on the 9th, and it was Hitamaru Sasaki's 20th anniversary as a wrestler, right? Independent wrestler, mostly doing his work with Kyushu Pro, and he gets a big, big celebration as he gets to face one of Japan's arguably top heavyweights right now in Shuji Ishikawa. Ishikawa brings him down with a giant slam to cap off that show, and it has to make you wonder who can show up from Kyushu Pro. We will not lie, we're not very familiar with a whole lot of their talent besides maybe Mentai Kid and Genkai, who have been, and Sakurajima, who have been wrestling there for quite some time. But it'll be very interesting to see what doors that opens up. Not to mention the fact that Ishikawa has been working doing matches outside of All Japan this year in terms of representing All Japan. If you will recall, Ishikawa actually worked a match over in Taka Michinoku's promotion, Just Tap Out. And so it should be noted that Ishikawa is sort of become the ambassador to represent All Japan outside of All Japan to different wrestling promotions. So I dig that. I think that's kind of cool. If you want to have good representations, you need to lead with your best foot forward, and Ishikawa is about as best as you can get. So that's awesome. Good for Ishikawa. And this one that just landed on us earlier today, right before we recorded, was the full LEAT UWF show lineup just came out. Now, for those of you unfamiliar, LEAT is going to have two different styles, two different flavors, if you will, of pro wrestling. They're going to have themselves a UWF revival, and they're going to have themselves GLEAT, which is going to not exactly lean towards that shoot style that UWF is known for. But I'm going to run through that card real quick. In the opener, we have the battle of former junior heavyweight champions, really the battle of former of All Japan junior wrestling icons, which is Kaz Hayashi and Hikaru Sato. That's a big, big one. Big one, I would definitely say. So I know a lot of folks are looking forward to that. I would be too. Kaz not exactly known for working a shoot style, so it'll be very interesting to see how that develops. Minoru Tanaka, Soma Watanabe, who was one of the first signed talents to GLEAT when they first announced they were officially launching. They will go up against Taidu Abe and a man clouded around controversy in Shrek Sakine. Now, if you're not familiar with the name, I don't blame you. But for those of us who are huge Naoya Nomura fans, you will recall that Sakine was the guy that put Nomura on the shelf in that awful grappling match, exhibition match, what have you. And so I question the booking here, but that's not what we're here to talk about. We're just here to report on it, and we're going to leave it at that. Yu Iizuka from Heat Up. Fantastic acquisition, great worker. He's going to go up against Takatoshi Matsumoto, so that's going to be a very interesting match to look forward to. Daijiro Matsui, who actually has spent some time working in All Japan back in the earlier 2000s, he's going to go up against Takuya Wada, who himself has spent some time in All Japan as well. Was a very good friend of Atsushi Aoki, the dearly departed Atsushi Aoki. And you're going to love this, Matt. In the main event, Takanori Ito is going up against Dio Kawamura, who you might also know as Rocky Kawamura, who you might also know as Rambo Kawamura. So it'll be very interesting to see Kawamura kind of get back into his shell because he was very much known as a pretty solid shoot-style worker before he kind of started getting into the comedy bits. And so, that should be a pretty action-packed first UWF show that'll happen on the 9th. But you can see some former All Japan wrestlers there and some guys that have had some crossroads in it. It'll be very interesting to see that. And I'm wondering if you'll eventually see UWF Lidet guys start working the hard hit pro shows. Now, hard hit is Sato's side promotion that he got to take with him. Originally, they were branded, co-sponsored by DDT, but Sato took them with him on his way out, leaving DDT pretty much for good. And so, yeah, that just landed on our lap. Matt, are you a fan of any of these matchups, or are you a fan of any of these wrestlers? I mean, Minato Tanaka, he's still like one of the best junior heavyweights in the world, arguably. Izuka, fantastic talent, young up-and-comer. Wada is always a delight to watch. And, of course, that opener, I mean, man, that is like, wow, you know?
Yeah, if we could find it, if I can find a place to watch it, I'll definitely go check it out. I love Minoru Tanaka. The card's definitely stacked. So again, it's just more of where to watch it type of thing, ordeal. If there's a place I can watch it, then I am definitely checking this out.
Right on. Okay, for sure. The Champions Night, it is going to be on the 16th, so it is 6 days from us recording. Hopefully we'll have this episode up by then. I will try my damnedest to make sure that happens. But we did do a run-through of the card, but why don't we kind of break it down and talk about predictions? Let's start at the bottom of the card. Let's start at the opener. What are you seeing on this?
I'm definitely calling Strong Hearts to get a win.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm going by who pins who, I'm gonna say T-Hawk pins Hayato.
Okay. All right. So you say T-Hawk. Okay. All right. Yeah, and there was actually footage of I believe Strong Hearts taking on Hayato in a 6-man tag in EPW, which is Ehime Pro Wrestling, which is the group Hayato is originally from, where T-Hawk just chapped the living hell out of Hayato. So I'm sure Hayato has an axe to grind against T-Hawk, but I think it's going to be a fantastic match as well. I'm going to go with, I'm going to say T-Hawk is going to pin Francesco Akita, our friend Francesco Akita. I just kind of feel like that's the flavor of the moment. That's what I'm feeling right now. In the 8-man tag, the Jumbo Tsuruta Memorial match, what are your thoughts on that? What are you feeling?
I'm probably going to go with Fuchi over Chikara.
That's a safe bet, definitely.
Yeah, I definitely see Chikara getting pinned, but I think by Fuchi, the crowd still loves Fuchi no matter what. So
okay, I could buy that. I will go with. I'm gonna say Koshinaka pins Chikara, and even though I want to say Fuchi, I would definitely think that maybe, just maybe, even though Koshinaka has slowed down and his work and him showing up in just random promotions, that he might start working a little bit more in All Japan. I mean, why not? You know, I could use a little more grumpy men in, you know, my All Japan for the most part, right? And it's not like Koshinaka's a bad worker, right? So maybe this opens up the door of, you know, Koshinaka working a bit more with Fuchi. They are just about temporaries, about like 4 or 5 years apart. Fuchi, of course, was starting out, kind of pulling away from being a young boy just about the time Koshinaka was just getting into the dojo. And so I honestly wouldn't mind seeing them together on special matches a bit more throughout the year. You know, I could dig that. So the tag match with the Shino and Honda going up against Doi and Kumarashi, what do you think? What are you feeling?
I'm probably gonna say Koji Doi pins Honda.
Okay.
Like I feel like this is gonna be a totally eclipse night if I was a better man.
Mm-hmm.
And with Honda team up with Ishino, I think they say Honda is there to eat the pin
Right.
while protecting Ishino.
Well, do you think it's going to be like a standout match of the night?
I'm gonna say no because of how the top matches of the card are laid out.
Okay.
But it could happen. There's a chance it could happen.
Those are all really good workers, and Doi and Arashi, they complement each other so well. I think that could steal the night in terms of tag matches. I don't know about matches overall for the night, but that could be like the tag match that really just steals it away. Like people go in with low expectations and get blown away, right? How about the 6-man tag title match?
I think we're gonna get new champions. I say Hokuto Amori
Mm-hmm.
pins Carmelito just because he's not there.
Okay. All right. I'm going to say this is going to be a fun match. I think you've got a lot of good workers in this, but they need to keep the pace like go, 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 right? Kind of not as fast and frenetic as, say, a Toryumon Classic 6-man tag, just because, you've got guys like Omori and Tajiri that obviously can't go as fast as everybody else can. But I do have hopes that this is going to be a really good 6-man tag, and I really do hope that Total Eclipse do win the tag belts. But don't be surprised if they don't. I would say that it's about a 50-50 split right now. What do you think about the All-Asian tag title match?
I'm gonna go with Zeus and Izanagi retain the belts.
Mm-hmm.
With I think was Izanagi pitting Tamura.
Okay, he gets his win back.
Yeah, to get the win back. But I do think we'll have a better match compared to the last time.
Yeah,
since that was just more of a undercard match, but with the belt on the line, I think we'll see Dan Tamura shine as a breakout for that match.
Okay. World Junior Heavyweight title match. What do you think?
I want Seba, but I feel like they'll give it back to Koji.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna go with Koji getting the belt back.
Okay. Is it going to be a better match than their last one?
Oh, I think for sure it'll be a better match compared to the last time. Like we'll get more out of. I think we'll get more out of him this time around.
Okay. All right. I can see that. As far as the All-Asian tag titles, I got to say that I've been kind of going back and forth about this. And I've made bold predictions that we're going to see new champions all the way around. But having some time to really think about it and listening to what you're saying here, I would have to think that Zeus and Izanagi do retain, right? Because I think they're primed to drop it to somebody like Doi and Arashi, right? So if they get the win there, I think it'll only help to build credibility in their team to win the All-Asian tag belts. And I think we've talked about this before, maybe off on the side, but I do think it primes them for a good chance to take that. As far as the World Junior Heavyweight title, my heart says Iwamoto, but my head says CIMA. So I'm gonna call a split here, right? Because I feel as though nobody really loses in this instance, right? A lot of people have said that while Iwamoto is a great junior heavyweight, he is the defender of All Japan, he is a young guy, right? He is a young guy, and the thing is maybe some of the All Japan fan base feel as though he still has something to prove to really be like the top dog, right? Because at this point, he would be a 3-time World Junior Heavyweight Champion, right? And so my thoughts are that if CIMA holds on to the belt longer, it's a definite sign that GLEAT is either just, they don't care what happens in regards to Strong Hearts working in All Japan more, which is only a good thing, right? And we also have to keep in mind that the Junior Battle of Glory is right on the horizon, right? So while it is great to give Iwamoto somebody to challenge, should he win the World Junior Heavyweight title, it does kind of, I don't know. I think it's a little rushed if you have Iwamoto facing this person, whoever wins the Junior Battle of Glory, just to, eat him up as far as a defense, right? I mean,
Right.
sure, it gives him a credible challenger, but the Junior Battle of Glory is normally a pretty good tournament. It's a good watch, and it would be a damn shame. Although it has happened before where somebody has won it and it kind of just went nowhere. So it's really hard for me to say. It's a split in my view. I can't really say for certain if Seema is going to beat Koji or Koji's going to beat Seema. If you put a gun to my head right now and I had to say it, I'd probably say Seema wins, right?
All right, very good.
What about the World Tag Team titles? What do you feel?
I feel like Kento and Yuma are gonna retain them.
Okay.
I feel like I think a couple more defenses. Hell, for all we know, they could probably hold them till the tag league at the very least.
Okay.
But it'll be hard to call. It'll definitely be a good old brawl from Shuji and Kohei, like beating down Kento and Yuma while they're trying to overcome it.
Right.
But I think who beats who, I'm probably going to say Kento beats Shuji to get that little win back.
Uh-huh. Okay. I would think that Next Stream doesn't lose anything by dropping the tag belts to a couple of veterans that definitely have some experience and beating young guys and taking belts away and just generally be a thorn in their side. So I realistically think it's entirely possible that Ishikawa and Sato get one more ride into the sunset themselves as the Twin Towers. And they get the win over Yuma and Kento. Now, whether or not Kento and Yuma wind up staying together to win those belts back would be a mystery. But if I had to take a guess, I would say they'll lose the belts and then they win them in a rematch, right? I think that's a pretty safe guess. So I'm going to say new tag champions here. Saitos going up against Team BJW. What do you think?
I feel like the Saitos are going to show promise, but I think it's obvious that other team's going to win. So I'm going to go with Daisuke pinning June.
Okay.
In the match. But again, yeah, I think they'll show promise, that potential. But since they're starting out, I do not see them win the paying their dues type of ordeal. And I guess and in the ring with Daisuke and Yasufumi, I think that's a great first choice of their debuts.
Yeah,
because again, big guys.
Yeah.
They could teach them how to work that type of style to help them for the future.
The Road to Royal Road strong style, different martial arts fight third. Yeah, it's pretty obvious that Tatsu's going to pull out the win, but it does make me wonder if this is going to be better than the other two, which I pray to God it is. Do you think it could possibly be better?
No.
And in the main event, Suwama, Jake Lee. We've already kind of given our really strong feelings about this, but
Jake.
but let's sort of think about it, pull it apart for just a second. I mean, what is there for Suwama to gain by winning this thing? I mean, he's already had one of the most successful Triple Crown title reigns he's ever had. It might be the most successful Triple Crown title reign that he's had. So I mean, if he does go out, he's going out on top. He was a 5-crown king. He basically bounced back to form in the Champions Carnival. I think that's a hell of a way to go out and signal that you're still a guy at the top. And for Suwama, I don't think there's anything to gain by beating Jake. I don't.
He doesn't need it.
No.
And I feel like I get that Jake's heel, but I feel like he's gonna want to beat this on his own.
Yeah.
Especially to get that win back.
Right.
And with Suwama selling his neck, yeah, it's probably been about 2 weeks since then. But how bad is that neck gonna be? Like, is he to the point where Jake can just ruin it with a headlock to do damage to it, and then beat him with the D4C?
Mm-hmm.
But again, I think if Jake's first win should be on his own. If he wants to do Eclipse distractions or something, I would say wait till he has the belt first.
Right.
And before we close that part up, do you see Nomura coming back this show, or you think he should hold off?
I'm predicting nothing. I mean, I really thought that Nomura was going to come back by the end of the carnival. He did not. And I know we also talked about the possibility that he just shows up at, like it's Jake's moment. Jake won the carnival. Give, Jake all the fanfare. But at this point, I make no predictions about Nomura. Like, I can't. I want to. I have all the confidence in the world that if he is ready, he will come back when he wants to. I have no idea when that is, though. And I love Nomura. I want to see him back, but it's really hard to say.
So they're probably. I say I don't think he comes back. I say maybe summer at least.
Could be. I mean, he could also be just, done. And it's not a unsurprising thing in All Japan where you see a promising young talent and it's pretty much just like, nope, there's the ball game right there, and you got to anticipate that. But
Right.
anyways, those are our predictions for the 5/16 Champions Night show. We hope that you folks will be tuning in and checking it out and watching in excitement just as much as we will be. Matt, what are you working on for Chair Shot these days?
Well, the carnival's done, so that saves up some room. I'm gonna be covering Champions Night when it comes out. I'm probably gonna check out Dragon Gate's King of Gates, and I'm not sure yet. I'm not gonna say anything yet, but I might have an interview with someone from the States that's making their comeback from retirement at the end of the month. I'm gonna get more details on that later, but definitely check that out if that does happen.
And they can check that out on the chairshot.com, right?
They can check out the chair shot or the person that wanted me to do this for his website or stuff like that. But once I do get the details and make the interview happen, I will be posting updates as to where you can listen to it.
And you can find us both on Twitter
I'm at DamienPhoenix12. You can find me there.
And, of course, you can find out what we're always going on about with AJPW Worldwide. We're currently taking a break right now, but we'll probably resume in a couple of weeks. We will see how that goes. We want to also give a big shout-out to Cage Match and Puto Love. They do the Lord's work. Without them, this podcast becomes infinitely tougher to do. And so we want to just give a shout-out to them. We want to give a shout-out to all the folks out there that are a part of reporting in things that they observe or see for the Japanese pro wrestling community that are credible, we should say. And so we hope you're also checking us out on our Facebook. Just look us up on Facebook, All Japan Worldwide Fan Group. We do fantastic stuff. We have a really good time. Our Trivia League is pretty much reaching its peak right now. We're getting right up to the Champions Carnival of Trivia, and Matt is one of the players that is in the top 4 slots right now. I know that he is very excited to see who he will be having to deal with outside of his block, and if you're ever interested in that, you should pop on over to the Facebook group and say, hey, I want to get in on that trivia, the All Japan Pro Trivia. We have a lot of fun with that, and we hope that you're subscribed to our YouTube channel so you could check out all of our interviews, English commentaries, SUWAMA'S Station podcast. You can also check us out on podcast, the Chair Shots podcast radio network, and we are really proud to be a part of that. Proud to be on Spotify through Chair Shot. Good stuff right there. But for Matt and Dave, we are out of here.